Hiring your first employee is one of the most exciting and dangerous moments in your business. On one hand, you're thinking, I can finally get some help. I won't have to do everything myself, and this is how real businesses grow. But on the other hand, one bad hire can drain your cash, your time, your energy, along with your confidence. In this episode, we're going to talk about when it actually makes sense to hire your first employee, the warning signs you might be hiring, too early or too late, and how to do it in a way that helps your business grow without blowing the whole thing up. Hi, I'm Matt. I've spent over 25 years building companies as a serial entrepreneur and helping small business owners navigate challenges and avoid costly mistakes. Welcome to the Beyond BST channel. I strive to provide the answers to questions all business owners have using real-world, practical experience. Let me know how I can help. Let's start with why people hire their first employee and where it can go sideways. Most small business owners hire their first employee because they're overwhelmed or they're working too many hours. Maybe they're burned out or they feel like this is just what you do next. Here's the problem. Hiring is not a reward for being busy. It should be a business decision, not a stressed out response. If you hire because you're exhausted, but your business can't support the cost, the workload isn't predictable, or the role isn't clearly defined, you're not going to get that relief. You're just going to get more pressure. Before you hire anyone, you need to ensure that the problem is actually a lack of people and not a challenge with systems and pricing and focus or something else. If you hire into that mess, the mess just gets more expensive. A good first hire should remove pressure, not multiply the chaos that's already there. I can give you a real example. I worked with a business owner who was convinced they needed to hire immediately. They were working 60, 70 hours a week. They had an email backlog and they weren't able to follow up with customers anymore. There was constant stress and they assumed the solution was a full-time employee. But when we took a moment to just break it down, here's what we found. Almost 40% of their time was being spent on scheduling, invoicing, and basic admin. None of that required industry knowledge. None of it even required the owner. Instead, rather than hiring a $50,000 to $60,000 employee with payroll, taxes, and all sorts of commitments, instead, they brought in a part-time VA for a fraction of that cost. Within 60 days, the admin bottleneck disappeared, customer response times improved, and the owner had time to focus on sales and pricing and everything else he actually enjoyed. The revenue went up and the stress eventually went back down. That's the difference between just hiring a person and actually solving the problem. Let's look at some solid green flags that you're ready to hire. You have consistent, predictable work. There are clear tasks that someone else could do 80 to 90% as well as you. You can afford the hire even during slower months, and you know exactly what success looks like in this role, KPIs. If hiring one person feels like a make or break moment, that's not growth. That is too much risk. Before you put someone on payroll, let's take a breather and ask, do I actually need an employee or just some of my time back? Remember, a full-time employee comes with a lot: fixed payroll, taxes, management, and a long-term responsibility. And sometimes that's just not the right move. Your first step may not be an employee, but it should be buying back specific pieces of your time. That might look like a virtual assistant, a VA, handling scheduling and email or admin. Maybe you sub out your bookkeeping or your marketing or design, outsourcing tasks that are necessary but not core to the business. The key difference is that you're not hiring a person, you're solving a problem, and it's cheaper. So if the work is clearly defined, repeatable, and doesn't require deep knowledge of your business, maybe you don't need an employee. Subbing it out may be the better choice. And this approach lets you do everything you need. It'll reduce your workload, it'll test the systems, it identifies real bottlenecks without locking yourself into payroll too early. If and when you do hire your first employee, clarity really matters. Your first hire is not there to just help wherever needed or figure things out or somehow magically fix the business. That's how frustration builds fast, both for you and your new employee. Your first hire should have a very narrow, clearly defined role, specific responsibilities and clear expectations, and simple success metrics, key performance indicators, KPIs. Ask yourself, why am I doing this? Or what do I do that drains my time and maybe doesn't really require me? And start there. If you don't define the role will define you, and usually not in a good way. You don't need fancy HR systems or a perfect interview process, but you do need that clarity. Before you hire, write down exactly what this person will handle. Decide what good performance looks like. Understand the true cost of the hire. And be honest about whether this is a full time, a part time, or just a temporary job. Here's the reality: your first employee is not going to be perfect. You're not hiring a unicorn, and you can't expect owner level effort. You're hiring breathing room, not brilliance. Once you hire your first employee, your role changes too. You're no longer just doing the work. You're also training and communicating and setting expectations, as well as having the occasional uncomfortable conversation. Now, that doesn't mean you did something wrong. In fact, it means you're now running a real business. If you're not ready to lead, even in a simple human way, hiring is going to feel a lot heavier than expected. Hiring your first employee isn't about looking successful. It's about making your business more sustainable. The right hire is going to buy back your time, reduce pressure, and it lets you think like an owner again. If you hire wrong or hire at the wrong time, you're going to create stress and risk and maybe regret. So just slow down, get clear, make the decision intentionally that's right for your business. Thanks for watching. I really hope it was helpful. And if it was, like, subscribe. I really appreciate a comment or send me an email. That's where I look for future topics. Now take a breath. You've got this. All right, what's next?